Yeah, I started pulling out a few.
Great, thank you.
We'll get them to start asking more too. Oh, we're live. Hello. Welcome to our first meeting of Journalism Ethics Month. And Waylon, would you like to lead us in a bow?
Sure. All right, take a great posture, everyone. Probably a lot's going on in your brain and your day. Is anyone having a busy day? Remember, anything technical goes below. Take a good posture, breathe. Take a good posture, breathe, relax. Let's not have any chat. Yeah, Jen's allowed. If you find yourself distracted, simply notice that thought. And the noticing itself is meditation. Just sitting still and breathing is not particularly meditation. It's the building and training your mind to have awareness of your distraction. And then return to your breath. And with love and curiosity and respect and focus, relaxed focus, give it away.
Thank you, Waylon.
Thank you.
Such a great way to start journalism ethics, starting with that contemplative practice. So a couple of housekeeping things before we dive right in. Like Waylon said, questions in the sidebar, technical questions if you're having Crowdcast issues down below in the Ask a Question section. And we want to encourage you to reach out outside of your small groups and to make a new friend. It's a new month. Reach out to other apprentices in Parade or Academy, Elephant Academy, in our Facebook groups, and start building those relationships, get to know each other. So, journalism ethics. Why do we do journalism ethics? Why is it so important to the work that Elephant does, Waylon?
So, I mean, let's, there's no need to really type the bow, just do the bow, folks. Let's just focus. So, basically, like all the movies that everyone likes to go watch, particularly in the summer or in the Christmas season, are about some boy or girl or man or woman saving the whole world, right? Unfortunately, or fortunately, saving the world isn't usually done by James Bond or Harry Potter. It's done by who? Does anyone have ideas? And don't say what you think I want you to say. Say who actually helps to save the whole world. So, yeah, I mean, Marjorie is sort of summing up Margaret Mead's quote, right? It's the small group committed to change is the only group that saves the world. Whatever the actual quote is, someone could put it in, but everyone knows that quote. People being able to hear, if not, ask questions below the title. So today I'm interviewing Sean Heinrichs on my Walk the Talk show, on my video series. Sean is responsible for super viral photos of, okay, I feel super distracted. So let's just focus and relax. So yeah, let's just focus and relax. It's all super helpful. So I watched this video of Sean Heinrichs this morning. He's an activist, a photographer, an artist who's trying to bring attention to sharks, shark finning, and manta rays, which are rapidly going extinct. And if you think that doesn't matter to you, they're an integral part of the ocean ecosystem, which is rapidly dying. And if the ocean dies, we're going to have billions of people starving, right? At the very least. So I'm interviewing him today, and his whole challenge, and I'd love to hear from Kenny or from all y'all what your suggestions were for the world's most important question. So before we get to journalism, how do we save the world? And Sean, in his TED Talk, which I just watched here in Boulder, he said it's awareness first. If you're not aware, nothing can happen, then it's inspiration to make a change. And then it's making that change. And that's super obvious, right? But we're seeing that right now with Parkland, right? Does anyone know what I'm talking about?
Unfortunately, yes.
That again and again and again, there's a quote I put on our Twitter where I said, after the shootings in Connecticut, we basically said, we raised our hands and said, there's nothing we can do. When we say there's nothing we can do, so we had awareness, but then we said there's nothing we can do. There was no inspiration to create change, or not enough. We basically are committing to a future that looks like the past. We are saying more school shootings will happen, and that is okay with us. And that's a profound and really intense statement. Even if we don't think school shootings are okay with us, just like if we don't think being prejudiced against African Americans or any minority or LGBT community is okay. If we don't take action to rectify ongoing wrongs, we are complicit in that wrong continuing. And it's not that all of us can save the whole world in all ways at all the time, but we have to, from a basic human point of view, care. So what were some of the suggestions, Kenny?
So Chloe asks, why does history just keep repeating itself?
Right. There's a quote at University of Colorado here in Boulder that says, and I'm sure Kenny saw it if she went to the library up at CU back in the day. It says, the generation that learns nothing from the past remains forever a child, something like that. A child in the bad sense. Right now we're seeing children in the good sense. Anything else?
Yeah, Marissa had an important question is, will you stand by it forever? Which I think is a really interesting one in journalism ethics.
Yeah. To me, so was there anything else?
Rachel says, how can we use our gifts to be of service to the world?
Yeah. So these are all beautiful questions. The way I phrase it personally, and there's no obviously one answer, but it's the most important question certainly from a journalist perspective is, how do you get people to pay attention and care about and to important things? How do you get people to pay attention to things that matter? Because all are happy to go watch some silly rom-com or action adventure movie or, eat candy or whatever. Like the fun stuff is easy, right? But it's people like Jon Stewart or John Oliver or quality storytelling, a moving documentary, a powerful book that get us to pay attention to things that we don't think we care about. And the amazing thing from a Buddhist point of view, you are fundamentally good. Kenny is fundamentally good. Wendy is fundamentally good. Aaron is fundamentally good. Madeline. We're fundamentally good, not theoretically or philosophically, but because when presented with injustice or suffering, we naturally, our hearts leap out of our chest and we naturally feel empathy. So I wanted to start from this perspective because hopefully everyone gets this perspective, right? But this is journalism. So often when you think about journalism ethics, I feel like journalism ethics is a very unsexy term for the most important thing in the world, which is the art and the craft of getting people, millions of people, to care about important things. And like Shauna Heinrich says, if you care about important things, then you're naturally moved to rectify wrongs. So if we do nothing to change, elephants, tigers, lions, manta rays, sharks, they will all be gone within your children's lifetime. And that's just a fact. If you can't hear anything, refresh, but you can't hear what I'm saying. So again, comments down in the below. Someone should be in the comments replying to those, not me. Okay.
So I'm curious, because you have a journalism degree, you have a background in journalism in a formal education sense. Was there a topic or was there something happening in your life at the time that you chose to go to university that journalism really called to you? I know coming out of the Shambhala community that there's a lot of writers within the Shambhala community, but there's not a lot of journalists. And so I'm curious what was it that really sparked it and really called to you?
You're breaking up there a bit, maybe. But I think I heard you. Yeah, I think at the time I was, so I went to journalism school at, thank you, Rachel. So I went to journalism school at Boston University, which is one of the top journalism schools in the world, in the US. And I think I just went because I love to write, like a lot of you all, and I wanted to be able to make a living writing. I don't think I had any big grandiose ideas about changing the world, particularly when I was like 16. But I was smart enough, I guess, to know that if I just wrote and did creative writing, I would probably be super broke. And I'd grown up really broke and I didn't want to be broke. And at the time there wasn't Kickstarter or a way to publish independently, like my book behind me. So I'll just tell a story because I know we're going to get to it anyway, if that's okay. Great. Kenny, I can't see your video.
Oh, let's see. I will drop out for a second and I'll come back.
Now I can see you. I can see you now. You're fuzzy though, so maybe close everything you're not using. Anyway, so the story, which I think Kenny was going to prompt me with, was so the process of going to journalism school is super unromantic. Basically, you go and you write for the school paper about, like, I think I remember writing about a video arcade opening in Harvard. You know, it's kind of like, who cares? But you interview a bunch of people and you kind of get into it and it's kind of fun. And the whole like sort of gumshoe cliche where you're wearing a fedora with like a pencil in it and you're taking notes and you're interviewing people, that actually is journalism. Journalism isn't most of what we do on Elephant, where we're just kind of putting our own life stories together. That can be journalism, but it's generally not. Or we're repackaging actual journalism in a friendly way to get people to pay attention. Those are both wonderful, but they're not necessarily journalism. So then I had a professor who actually we're going to invite to a future academy. He's on the list. He's like in his 70s now, but his name is Professor Klarfeld. And I was like the best student in his class. I was a big nerd and super ambitious and full of myself kind of, and fun at the same time, I think. And he basically tore me apart for months and months and months and months. I couldn't get. So we started with the obituary. The obituary is the fundamental building block of all writing in journalism and really in all writing in some way, because you start with the facts, just the very simple facts, and then you expand into the story from there. So I wrote obituaries for months and didn't get a single sentence through him without it drowning in red ink. And he just tore me apart. It was sort of the equivalent of like that movie where, forgetting his name. Anyway, where you enter the military and you just get torn apart and then kind of rebuilt by the sergeant. Yeah, good enough, Karate Kid. So I thought I was hot shit, hot stuff, excuse my French. And I kind of was, but he just tore me apart. And it was a really amazing and humbling experience for me at the age of 17. Because at the age of 17, you think, when you're getting straight A's and you're a nerd, and not only a nerd, but you're like not insecure, you're full of yourself, which is a kind of awful combination. To have someone really mentor you in that way was really wonderful. So anytime you are having a hard time in this academy, remember that hopefully, as Pema always says, Pema Chodron, the hard stuff is what's going, if you listen to it and you learn from it, and you let it soak into your heart instead of running away from it, that's how you will grow as a person. When you're feeling that intensity, that's how you'll grow. We often say in the new agey world that stress is bad. Well, stress isn't bad. Stress is what happens to your muscles when you exercise, right? Kenny, go for it if you want.
So you shared an article yesterday, and I think this is a really apt one in our current environment, the case against Google. So for those of you that missed it, it's in the Academy group, but I'll plug it in to the sidebar, and you can read it later.
Yeah, read it later. It's too late now.
Yeah.
Obviously.
So would you like to kind of give the background a little bit and on why this one caught your attention? Because there's so much going on constantly.
Yeah.
It seems that especially with this one.
So
talking about monopolies and
we're going to get more into other stuff like journalism, media, all those other
exactly.
Right?
But I want you to talk about like why. So with Google specifically, with the case against Google, that it's a matter of restricting essentially information and how we get information out to people, which I think is part of the reason why we start with social media and then we move into journalism ethics, because we're helping, hopefully, our apprentices build up a platform to get their information out to people. So now we're actually moving into this place of what the information is. And when we're gathering important news, things like shark finning and why people should care, and back to that most important question.
So Google, so first of all, is Google evil? And people answer that in one word. Leah cheated. Yeah, so I'm liking that people are saying no. Is Google a force for good? In one word. Is Google a force for good? Okay, so I just wanted to start with that because too often this kind of discussion gets caught in binaries, right? In black and white, in saying Google is evil. No, Google isn't evil. So we're good on the comments, guys. So Google is not evil. That's not the point of this article. Did anyone read this article? Can they sum up what the point of the article is? You have more than one word. If you read the article and you were inspired, what was the point of the article? Anyone? I'll just say it since we don't have a lot of time. So Google basically has drifted in the past, even like 4 years. It's drifted from being a pretty benign company. Its slogan was, don't be evil, right? Ironically. And it's drifted to the point where it's basically, does anyone know what Google Books is? It's basically taken what it did with Google Books, which is copy pasting every book ever without permission because it just wanted to doing that to every website ever. So if you search, if Kenny, have you talked about your big news, or is that inappropriate? We'll move on.
I don't mind. But okay. No, in this venue, I have not talked about my big news.
Would you like to say it in one word?
Sure.
Or a couple words.
One where it could be an emoji. My big news is that I'm pregnant in 20 weeks today. I'm halfway through. So I'm going to have the first little elephant baby.
First little elephant baby? Yeah, actually, that is funny because in the first 15 years of elephant, I don't think anyone's ever been pregnant. And we're like 90% women staff. So that's kind of, so you're the, pioneer. So what is something that everyone does when they maybe get pregnant or find out that they're pregnant? Kenny, I lost your video. So you Google stuff, right? Okay, so enough congratulations, folks. Let's focus. We don't have much time.
Nice.
So let's congrats later. We can have a thread. Later. You guys got to be quicker if you want to do this stuff. So you're going to Google stuff, right? So even 4 years ago when you Googled, I'm going to wait until everyone comments. Okay. Yeah, there is a delay. That's helpful to remind me of. I'm only slightly cranky because we have so much to get through, and I really want to make sure you guys are getting your money's worth. So you're going to Google resources. What should I buy for, I don't know. I'm not a pregnant woman or a husband of a pregnant woman, but you're going to Google lots of things. What do I need for this? Health stuff. What do I need to buy? How do I need to do this? You might even Google Craigslist to get a beautiful crib off of Craigslist or something new. Whatever you're going to Google. I mean, literally, we use the word Google for searching, right? That's how ubiquitous it is. In the last 4 years, Google has started ripping off sites like Yelp or TripAdvisor or Weather Channel or really any search you're ever going to do and putting the results under Google on the top. Airplane tickets, So Google is basically, the reason why they're doing that is because they're greedy, not because they're trying to do a good job. They want to monetize and keep everyone within Google as much as possible. So all these sites are dying. This is as much a Republican or a libertarian issue as it is some weird liberal hipster issue. This is anti-competition. They're killing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of startups and sites, whether established or new, that you've heard of or not. And they're doing that because they're monetizing. So I actually got to talk with a Google executive yesterday about this. And he kind of proudly said that Google increases in revenues. Listen to this. Google increases in revenues more in 1 quarter than all of Facebook in 1 year. Something like that. I'm sure I'm getting the numbers wrong, but Google is making mad money off of all of us. That's not really a problem, but read the whole article. Right. So there's a tendency within monopolizations, Chloe's touching on it eloquently. There's a tendency within monopolies that they go from making a lot of money, which is great and fine, that's America, that's capitalism, to squelching all competition. So in the 90s, as the article goes through, the US government spent a decade somewhat fruitlessly suing Microsoft. So if anyone thinks Bill Gates is a force for good, that guy basically ripped off, millions and millions and millions of people for a decade, and then now is giving some back in the form of tax write-offs, right? So not a huge fan. But the point of journalism here is that journalism basically shines light on corruption, whether it's corporations or government or sex trafficking or Me Too or anything. Basically anything that doesn't have light on it, journalism shines the light on it. Does that mean journalists are perfect? Does that mean journalism is perfect? No. Journalism is human. Everyone makes mistakes. Like science, facts are not this solid, heavy thing. Facts are curiosity. You're always finding out facts. So like Dave Rogers, who works at Elephant, and I got in a big debate about the effect of Airbnbs nationally on rental prices. Rents go up where Airbnbs are, and housing prices go up. So if you're looking to buy a house, if you're a first-time home buyer, if there's Airbnbs in your area, it's harder because there's less stock available. More people are buying second or third homes. Airbnb does rock for other people who own homes and are trying to pay their mortgage. It can do well. So as usual, there's truth in the middle, and journalism empowers that truth to come out, right? So is Airbnb evil? No. So stop. Even if you're going to boycott something, like I can't stand Amazon, it doesn't mean it's evil. It just means in many ways it's doing bad things, right? And in some ways it's doing good things. And you have to identify all of those. So the Romantic poets, I think, were the first ones to talk about, maybe my aunt remembers, but maybe one of you remembers. But basically there's a term that says, maybe Kenny knows, but it's something like intelligence, true intelligence is admitting two different truths that conflict at the same time. So you don't have to go all one way or the other, right? That's sort of like democracy. In democracy, protest and criticism of your government is part of your duty. It doesn't mean that you're unpatriotic. So whenever Democrats or liberals or whoever are burning up the flag or being unpatriotic, it makes me sad because their protest is actually the most patriotic thing possible. Burning the flag is actually a form of patriotism in a democracy, not in fascism, obviously. So, Kenny, get us back on track. But you're getting the idea that journalism is basically kind of almost like a cause. It's almost like a romantic cause for truth. The key difference is that it can't be led by your agenda. Journalism, do we have those Sherlock Holmes quotes?
Yeah, we do.
So let's put those in the sidebar.
Yeah, let's pop.
The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. I'm not sure if that's F. Scott Fitzgerald, but cool if it is. Okay.
Yeah, so another...
But where are the actual quotes from Sherlock? Do we have those? Okay. So basically, Sherlock Holmes explained, so everyone thinks Sherlock Holmes, a fictional character obviously, is a genius, right? There's a couple other quotes though. He basically, yes, it is a capital mistake to theorize before one has data. Insensibly, one begins to twist facts to suit theories instead of theories to suit facts. So let's say yes, exactly. So let's say so who's the least popular human on the planet right now? Anyone? Trump. I was thinking Harvey Weinstein. So let's say I'm doing a story on Trump or Harvey Weinstein, and I am predisposed to dislike them, right? I go and do some reporting. I call a bunch of people who know stuff about them. If you're having feedback, that's on your end. You got to refresh. You got to close everything. And again, for the 80th time, please put technical stuff below. And the TAs for the 80th time should be responding to comments, not me, or Jen, or someone should be. But where was I? So if I'm doing a story on Harvey Weinstein, so I did this with, I have a video that is widely reviled. People call me there's this blog on Gawker, or one of those sites, that calls me like a Trustafarian, like bro or something. I'm not a Trustafarian. Maybe I'm a bro, but I've never been called a bro by anyone who knows me. But where I basically did a video saying, okay, Bikram, Bikram, I forget his name, Bikram, the yoga guy, Chowdhury.
Trying to
Thank you.
Copyright hot yoga.
He built this huge yoga empire. So I did this video when it first came out. This was pre-Me Too, that he was sexually assaulting or harassing or maybe kind of date raping, in a sense, colleagues of his. I did a video saying, look, until the facts are in, innocent until proven guilty, we have to have evidence. That said, if he's done this stuff, he can go F himself, and all that. Guess what the reaction was to that video online? People hated me for that because it's unpopular to say we have to wait for facts, we have to wait for evidence. If multiple unnamed sources have come forward, then it's probably still true, even though none of them may have concrete facts or video or are putting their names forward. So I wasn't defending him. Recently, I posted an article about Woody Allen in the New York Times that I loved. And it was saying, there's no proof about Woody Allen. There's one person, obviously. And I had also showed Dylan's, his stepdaughter. I had also shared her article about what Woody Allen had done, allegedly. My point is, a huge part of the role of the journalist is to talk about the truth and research the truth and talk about the truth, whether it's popular or not. So it's very exciting to write about a good cause like Me Too or saving the sharks or reducing nuclear armaments or some sort of corruption. But you also have to talk about and kind of not defend, but remind people that evidence is necessary for unpopular subjects as well, right?
Could you talk about why we include journalism ethics in the academy? Because why that's so important? Because I think you're touching on that from a contemplative place, not only contemplative place, but why it's so important to search for the truth and not just hype.
Yeah, because basically human beings love to form themselves into mobs, angry mobs, right? Whether it's an angry mob in Charlottesville that we love to hate, or an angry mob that we're all a part of, I assume, called the Me Too movement. Mobs tend to kind of feel self-righteous and forget about kind of due process, right? And due process is a fundamental part of civilization. So due process doesn't defend or shouldn't defend corrupt jerks like Harvey Weinstein. But if the evidence is strong enough to convict them, like my hope is that Harvey Weinstein goes to jail based on the evidence, which is extensive at this point, and the testimony. Because if he's just smeared in the public sphere, that's not bad enough for him. He needs to be, a court of law needs to say, you did this stuff, it is awful, and you're going to hell for it. So journalists have to talk about news, evidence, facts, evidence, and innocent until proven guilty is very important. If I write a blog right now and I say, Kenny, robbed a bank, or I'm sorry to use you as an example, but like date raped someone, did something awful, she needs to have the right to defend herself and not to be convicted just because I have a huge blog. Does everyone agree with that? So when I shared that Woody Allen article, there were so many angry comments from friends of mine who are women who have a very understandable agenda based on their own awful experiences of Me Too, of being sexually harassed or assaulted, that I took the article down. And I was not proud to take the article down. It was a good article. It wasn't defending Woody Allen. It was defending the fact that there really hasn't been evidence around here, right? So does that mean we support Woody Allen? No. Does it mean we want more evidence? Yes. So being a journalist can make you a very unpopular person.
I think that's an important piece to talk about as well, that being a journalist is a really powerful position as well. When whatever you say, you have to take into account that this could affect a person's entire life as well.
Yeah.
Could you talk about Elephant's role in journalism? So we've talked about the role of the journalist and why journalism is so important, and how does Elephant fit into that place? Because a lot of people say, oh, Elephant's not journalism, that we're creative writing, or we're
yeah. Well, I say that. I mean, I don't think Elephant is journalism. Journalism is a very high bar, and once in a while we do journalism. Anyone can do journalism. You can do journalism in your Facebook status or on Elephant Now without an editor, just on your own. You can do journalism on Twitter. Doing journalism is responsible truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If I say Kenny is wearing all blue today, that's not true. That's partly true, but that's not the whole truth. She's also wearing white and other colors. So truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth really matters when you come to making statements about people, right? There's a lot of criticism of Trump that isn't fair because people have an agenda and they cherry pick things that make him look bad. The truth should be respected and powerful enough to make Trump look bad on its own terms, on truth's terms, right? So if Trump does something awful and that's a fact, then we report that, then he looks awful. We shouldn't have to kind of have an agenda about it, right?
Mm-hmm. Speaking of blue, Waylon is wearing all blue, except for his hat as well. It's like we planned this today.
Yeah, we're color coordinated.
And that's an important piece and we talked a little bit about this with Facebook Live last week, that to be able to use these platforms to report the news. So last year I was traveling to Dubai right after the travel ban, and my husband is half Indian. And when we were flying back, every man of color that got on the plane got pulled aside for extra screening. And I shared a photo on my Facebook, and that was one of the most shared things that I've ever posted on Facebook. I share cute baby photos all the time, and I was really proud of the friends that I had on Facebook, that people care about it. And so we can use even our personal platforms to get information out and to talk about important newsworthy things. Can you talk about the ethical side of journalism? So why so we talk about journalism in general, but what is it about journalism ethics that's so important, especially within a media organization?
Can you ask a more specific question?
Yeah, and so you talk about this with the role of the journalist, and so making sure that we're holding ourselves to a standard, that we aren't resorting to ad hominem attacks against people. That's not journalism. The way that we go about collecting facts and news to be able to report.
Yeah. Well, I could use the example of the military rape story. I don't know if that's in your notes. But years ago, a lady who had been in the military wanted to write an article about her getting raped in the military on Elephant. And we said no. Can anyone guess why? We got a lot of help for that, which is understandable but mistaken. So Leah is obviously sitting at the front of the class, raising her hand and getting the right answer right now. So yeah, Christina as well, Aaron. So it's a good example because do we all care about rape? Do we all care about rape in the military? Do we want to expose this and reduce it? Do we want to change the rules so that this no longer happens? Yes. Could we report on this? We couldn't, because her article had enough details in it, right, that you could kind of tell who she was talking about, but there hadn't been a court case. There wasn't proof, right? Again, if I keep wanting to use Kenny as an example because you're the only human I'm seeing right now, but if Kenny, if Kenny wants to write an article about something an ex-boyfriend did 10 years ago or whenever before you were married, and talking about him being abusive or something like that. Sorry to use you as these are awful.
Oh no, that's examples. Fine. I'm like Teflon today.
Okay. So we can't really do that story if anyone who knows Kenny, when she shares it to her Facebook wall or shares it with her friends, could identify who that was. Oh, wait, you were in college. Oh, he had dark hair. Oh, he wore, if there's any details and we can't prove it, yeah, we're destroying someone's life and reputation, and that's libelous. So the great thing, as journalists love to say, is an absolute defense against libel is what? Or what is an absolute defense against libel? Yeah, truth, proof. Proof is even better than truth, because if you have proof of truth, you're good. Truth can't be, hey.
I think we're having a Redford interruption at the moment.
Hey.
But like
yeah, sorry, we used to have dogs and the postman. It's a long tradition, a 100-year-old tradition. So yes, if the court case occurred, if there were documents, if there was proof, if there was conviction, hell yes. And if she told the story in such a way that there was no way to guess who she was talking about, that can work. But at that point, you have to believe the story of so many details, so many, that it's like barely a story anymore. So that's one of the most painful recurring things with Elephant is everyone wants to write about their ex-boyfriend or whatever who did something awful, or their father who did something awful when they were a kid. But we can't always write about it.
As editors, we get those stories often.
Yeah. So there you go.
Awesome. So,
and while I think the example of your husband on Facebook is inspiring, and that is journalism in that case, that's a popular thing to like for your friends. They're all going to like that because they believe in equality and they hate injustice. So the real point we're trying to get across is that journalism often
very unenlightened family members as well that don't believe it whatsoever, and so there's a bit of trying to reach out beyond the choir and say, actually, this happens.
Well, good for you. But that's still something you believe in.
Exactly. Like, yeah, it's not an unpopular position in my
right. And yeah, no, I mean, it's still brave and it's awesome. But I'm just saying, once in a while, you're going to be in the position of defending in people's minds, but not your mind, someone like Woody Allen.
Exactly. Yeah, and I've had that conversation, and it's a hard, uncomfortable, sticky place to be. And I think once you're in that place, you're doing something right, because you're obviously aware. If you are looking for facts and looking for truth that just supports your argument, that's not journalism.
So just to touch on that Sherlock Holmes quote again, if you're going into the story looking for facts, so someone said, how are you such a genius? How is Sherlock Holmes? How are you such a genius? And he said, I'm not a genius. All I do is, folks, let's focus again. Someone said, Sherlock Holmes, how are you such a genius? How do you figure out what no one else can figure out? And he said, I'm not a genius. All I do is I go into a crime scene or whatever, and I look for facts. I look for clues. And no matter what they tell me, what story they tell me, that's the truth. Mm-hmm. What I don't do, and what everyone else does, is I go in with prejudging, which is prejudice, which is an idea. This person probably killed this person because of this. So you have to drop your agenda and go in open-minded. And that's where it connects with Dharma, with meditation, with being present, with absolute truth. Is you have to go in completely open. That doesn't mean you're dumb. You can still say, well, this is a likely motive, and you can look for things that fit that. But you ultimately have to admit evidence that is contrary to your presupposed idea.
Could you talk about slow journalism and this idea? So there's a slow journalism video in the LMS. So you guys check that out afterwards as well. But what and how that ties into the work that you do personally, as well as what you're trying to start on a larger scale as well.
Yeah, slow journalism is the opposite of what all of you and we do on Facebook. So if you see a headline that says, you know, Bernie Sanders slams Trump, Russia investigation, blah, 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 and you like it without reading it, that is fast journalism. That is, you are just speedily liking things you already like.
It's a ticker tape underneath CNN. That's just little.
Yeah, right. It's just noise and hype and speed. And speed is the enemy of decency. So we're fundamentally good, but when you're speedy, you tend to lose your temper, you tend to objectify others, you tend to not understand the gray area, right? The evil versus good stuff. I mean, yeah, that things are in the middle. Doesn't mean everything's great, but that you understand what is good, what is helpful. Yeah. So what was the question? Oh, slow journalism. So just, if you can take the vow, this should be a Facebook challenge for the Academy. Never like an article on Facebook that you haven't read. Never share an article anywhere that you haven't read. That's slow journalism, is taking the time to actually read. And the amazing thing that happens when you actually read is what? You learn. Your mind expands. Your heart expands, like in Dr. Seuss. So Sean Heinrichs is this guy I'm interviewing later on in my day, so he's on my mind. And I just prepped by watching this video about these manta rays and sharks. And I felt like crying watching this video. You're seeing, he says, 10 sharks aren't killed a day. 100 sharks aren't killed a day. 1,000 sharks aren't killed a day. 10,000 sharks aren't killed a day. Hundreds of thousands of sharks are killed every day. And guess what? Their fins are lopped off, and most of them are left to drown because they can't swim, to suffocate. And that applies to manta rays as well. They cut off their gills. That's like me cutting out your throat and leaving the rest of you, or the people who cut off rhinos' faces or elephants' faces. But here's the point. I've known Sean Heinrichs for 10 years. I never watched a single one of his videos. I looked at a couple of his photos. I knew he did something with manta rays, but that was it. I was being speedy. And when I slowed down enough to watch a 10-minute video of his TED Talk today, I learned a lot. I felt like crying. At the same time, I felt inspired. My heart got bigger, and my mind got bigger because I knew more. And now I'm inspired to make change, right? And change is kind of easy in a funny way, right? Look at the Me Too movement. When it happens, when things flip, look at tobacco. Look at shark fins show, what's his name? The super 7-foot tall, 7'5" tall Chinese player. He's been campaigning against shark fin soup for, I think, 10 years at this point, and it started to become uncool in China. Yao Ming, thank you, David. Shark fin soup has stopped becoming cool. So it's rapidly flipping, but maybe not rapidly enough. It's still obviously happening. Anyway, Kenny.
Yeah, no, and I think we so often forget to do that because we think journalism has to be the breaking news. It has to be what is what's blasted all over the front of CNN or MSNBC.
Well, that's a good point. Can I jump in?
Yeah, of course.
I'm being too speedy. So what's the difference between, Kenny kind of gave it away because she's right on. What's the difference between news and journalism? Are they the same thing? Just good to think about. I won't answer that. I think the answer is sort of obvious in a sense. Second question, what's the difference between journalism and...
Can we speak it out for those that can't see the sidebar comments?
Oh, okay. So the difference between journalism and news is often breaking news in the sort of CNN model where it's like blah, 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 all the time. A lot of news is bullshit. A lot of news is noise. News is noise. Some news is the reporting of facts that actually matter. So the 24-hour news cycle, as people love to criticize it, has kind of degraded quality journalism. So that's why watching these PBS shows or whatever, the responsible shows, I like Anderson Cooper a lot. I think there's a lot of quality journalists doing quality work. There's I Hate Wolf. There's others who I despise.
Frontline is great.
Frontline. What other news shows are really quality? I actually really like, what's his name? Cuomo? What's his name?
Oh, yeah.
Andrew?
Well, which Cuomo?
His brother, the news guy. He's amazing lately. Maddow, I don't actually agree does journalism. I think she does commentary. It's not criticism so much as I think she's playing a different sport. She has an agenda. She's liberal, and she's doing commentary on the news with an agenda. 60 Minutes, there you go. I love 60 Minutes. I worship 60 Minutes. I mean, everyone does. That's sort of an easy one to do, but 60 Minutes, did anyone watch the last 60 Minutes? Chris Cuomo's the guy. The last 60 Minutes was on the sarin gas attacks. All the children just being loaded into the backs of trucks, dead with their eyes open. So heartbreaking. But when you watch that, like Sean Heinrichs, you have awareness, you're inspired to make a change. You may not know what to do, but you're inspired to make a change, and then change can happen, right? Governments can be exposed, held to account. You might call your congressperson.
Which is what we're seeing with the no more, the hashtag no more, or not again.
Oh, never again, yeah. So, and then a second question, what's the difference between journalism and media? Are they the same thing? A lot of people love to just criticize mainstream media.
We have one in the White House that likes to criticize mainstream media. Sana.
Yeah. Well, he likes to criticize anything that's critical of him.
Yeah.
I mean, we all have that tendency. It's called ego. But so media is in a pejorative. Media is just media. Media is films. Media is poetry. Media is, TV channels. Media is entertainment. Media is reality TV. Media is journalism. Media is everything. Journalism is one subset of that. So when people say, mainstream media or media is awful or whatever, it's sort of like saying the color red is the problem. Like, the color red is not the problem. Bloodshed from school shootings is the problem, and some of that is the color red. But you have to be precise. So anyway, just important for media literacy to be able to respond to these kind of criticisms. And then a lot of people say, oh, journalists have an agenda. Well, if a journalist has an agenda, they're probably not a journalist. That's why I say Rachel Maddow is fine and great, and you can love her, or Amy Goodman, or whatever, but they're not journalism. They may do journalism on occasion, just like I'm not a journalist day-to-day at Elephant, but I may do journalism, like the John Friend example, which I don't know if we have time.
I just wanted to touch on the fact that we sometimes get a little bit North American centric, but when it comes to journalism and good journalism and news organizations around the world, they're everywhere. And we're seeing, especially with journalists, there was a journalist that was just shot and killed in Slovakia. And we're seeing it in Malta. There's a journalist who's been really critical of the government that was just killed again about a month or so ago. And so I think we sometimes probably think it's safe in the States, at least, but journalism and journalists are people that are on the front lines. And sometimes that reporting of a breaking story is the most important piece, and sometimes it's going in depth too. But remembering that we include all of the world. So we have, I tend to read a lot of BBC and Al Jazeera as well. And so there's organizations that we can turn to. Waylon, can we talk about, do you want to talk about the John Friend? So sometimes Elephant does break news. Do you want to, we have a couple of minutes.
Yeah. What else is on your laundry list? Because we only, how late are we going?
We could go till 10 past.
Okay. Yeah. So I can do the John Friend, but what's the point of it?
Talking about breaking news, which we kind of did with Bikram, but being able to use the platform of Elephant to be able to have those journalistic conversations, which back to whether or not, so journalism and media, that Elephant is part of, it's a media organization. But it can also break news. So
let's chill on the comments again. We have recommended The Good Life to everybody.
My computer is currently sitting on top of The Good Life. It is lifting the computer
nice.
at the moment.
Nice. And, the question, what are the best news sources? That's good to talk about. But really, the most important thing is that you develop your own discernment to understand when you're being told something you already agree with. Maybe everyone in the academy loves to criticize people or Fox News or people who watch Fox. But if you're watching MSNBC or Maddow or Amy Goodman, Democracy Now!, you're doing the exact same thing, but the mirror image of it. That doesn't mean that what you're doing is wrong. It's fine to get commentary, just like the people who are watching Fox, it's fine for them to get one agenda or one perspective, as long as you're getting actual journalism, which most people don't typically, if they're watching Fox and that's all they ever watch. Okay, so let me tell you a little story. So I am a journalist and I don't often do journalism. So years ago, John Friend was a yoga teacher, is a yoga teacher, and he was the most powerful, richest yoga teacher in the world. He was on the cover of the Sunday New York Times about teaching. He was the founder of Anusara. Does anyone know John Friend here?
Anusara is really popular, or used to be really popular in Boulder as well. There's a lot of Anusara.
Yeah, it was huge. He'd been on my talk show. We were, I can't say we were friends, but we were friendly. He had supported Elephant whenever he could. He was definitely an ally. So he's on the cover of the Sunday New York Times, Anusara, and I'm sitting in Shine, a restaurant locally here, and I get a text, and two other colleagues, let's focus, folks, two other colleagues of mine who don't work for Elephant get texts at the exact same time, like all our phones start going off. And they say, there's some scandal. You could link to John Friend on Elephant. But there's some scandal with John Friend. There's stuff about him having affairs or having sex with students or blah, 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 blah. So my two colleagues immediately published blogs about everything they'd been told. Is that journalism? I'm sort of throwing up softballs, but we're short on time. So I didn't. I put up a blog saying there's huge news about John Friend, and we're not going to report on it until we find out information. Why did I put up that blog? I basically put up a blog saying nothing. I didn't inform anyone of anything. I lost the big breaking news, right? I lost the news. Remember, breaking news may not be journalism. Yeah, so I waited for the facts. But why did I bother putting up a blog that had almost no news in it, just saying that we were going to wait for the facts? Kind of what Wendy said. Because Trungpa Rinpoche will say, being a martyr isn't good enough. Dying for a good cause and losing isn't good enough. You have to win. So part of winning in the blog world is you break that news. You get the news up, or if you're CNN, you get the news up quickly, you get a ton of traffic, you get a ton of attention, but then you can't break the news if you don't have the facts. So you have to be responsible, you have to put it up and say, we're going to wait. So I did two things there. I got a lot of traffic, and I followed the journalistic code, unlike everyone else. So I immediately had a lot of traffic, and I also had the high ground, right? So I was smart, I got the traffic, but I also had the moral high ground. So what happened because I had the moral high ground? And no one else did. No other blog took that moral high ground. Everyone just jumped at it. And basically, it's sort of like, again, if I get a text saying, Kenny did something awful, date raped or whatever, something awful, it's important to actually say the things because it's awful. If I put up that blog, what's the effect on her life and her reputation? It ruins her life. Because as we know, a correction a week later on Elephant, Kenny didn't actually do this stuff, now that we've looked at the facts, is going to get read like 10% as much. And it won't restore her credibility or her life or her career. So, and I've had awful things said about me on Facebook and on YouTube and on whatever that site was. You can ruin someone's life without facts anytime, especially in the Me Too movement. The major problem, and I'm a huge fan of the Me Too movement for the most part, major problem with the Me Too movement is it gets a little bit like mobs and pitchforks and torches. That if I say, if it was reported that Waylon or any kind of famous-ish or famous white guy sexually assaulted or whatever someone right now, that news travels like wildfire. Aziz Ansari is a wonderful example, Nancy. Say more. Nancy, say more. It's a great example.
Frame it in the terms of alleged. So we talked about
alleged. So with John Friend,
alleged.
So coming back to John Friend, I didn't even say alleged because alleged is often a tricky word where you can ruin someone's life, but you said alleged, so legally you're fine. So allegedly, Kenny Linden is reported to have date raped a student of hers. That would still ruin her life if that was reported in major media, right? So allegedly isn't enough, but it is a good start. When you say alleged, you're saying it's alleged, it's not proven yet. But people don't slow down. Between the word alleged and the word date rape or rape, what word are people going to remember? They're going to remember rape and your name, and that's it. So it was important that I didn't report the John Friend thing until I got more info. Because I took the moral high ground, all the teachers and all the students who had experience with John Friend started coming to Elephant. And John Friend and his lawyers and his assistants and all that started coming to Elephant. So I started, if you search John Friend around that time, we have hundreds of articles by his students, by his teachers, by John Friend himself. I had multiple interviews. I had legal documents. The investigation expanded into his business dealings, and the New York Times and Washington Post and others all sourced from Elephant. We became the breaking news source for that entire story. None of that would have happened if I had gone after the cheap traffic, a couple thousand views around that first news. Do people get that?
Could you talk about that in the sense of sources? So you had people coming to you that you became ground zero, so you became a reliable source for other news organizations to pick that up, or for readers in general?
Well, I mean, I kind of just already described it, but I mean, the basic thing is I didn't go after the hot, sexy clicks. I went after the hot, sexy clicks, but then didn't say anything I didn't know. Waited until I knew more. And then I actually became a middle ground. So what I just said sounds really good. Like I did a great job, but the experience of it was that John Friend and his people kind of hated me, but respected me. And the teachers and students who were angry about John Friend abusing his power and all this kind of hated me. So we were in the middle where everyone sort of respected us and kind of loved us, but also kind of, we got a lot of criticism from both sides. And what do you say about, if you're getting criticism from both sides, what does that tell you?
You're doing something right.
Yeah, Kate, it is a tricky subject. I'm going to get we have to be able to discuss things, right? We can't ask for uniformity of belief. So if we're agreed with that, I actually have to disagree with one word, Kate, in what you just wrote. So with the Me Too movement, believing people, whether they're men or women, actually isn't right. Listening to them is right. So if you say we need to start listening, yes, because too often the sort of patriarchy and the power has just shut people up and sued people and tried to settle out of court and tried to hide and tried to suppress and tried to threaten, right? So I agree with what you're saying, but there also are false accusations, or more often gray area. So with the whole John Friend story, what did John Friend actually do? Does anyone have that? Does anyone remember what he actually did? And it destroyed his entire business. It destroyed his life. It destroyed his reputation. It destroyed the entire organization and all those people's jobs. So, yeah, you could say he abused his position of power. I think that's correct. But he also had consensual sex. He was single. He wasn't married, with married women who were in their 40s who, were students, but they were also teachers. The power imbalance did exist, so it was wrong. At the same time, there was never any allegations that it wasn't consensual or mutual. So it's a tough issue. And that's, again, where you don't say John Friend is evil, but you did say John Friend did abuse power. There was an imbalance. That said, it was consensual. There are no allegations of even a sort of date rape or abuse of power at the time. Yeah, so you can say all that without, exactly as Kat just said, I love, not that I agree with his actions. That is powerful, to be able to criticize and defend without saying I agree. So it's very difficult to talk about. With the Me Too movement, the danger is that people are getting accused. This happened to a couple. I was just rereading it. A couple on social media got accused by a woman of, I think the guy got accused of raping her or something. And the wife came forward. So everyone wants to believe victims or believe survivors, but you don't know if they're a victim or a survivor, or if they're lying. You don't know. Or if both sides are half lying. Do we know that? We don't know. And that's what's heartbreaking. If 16 people come forward, like with Cosby or Trump, you're pretty damn sure this person is been abusing their power and sexually assaulting and all that. So none of this is to defend people who have, tons of people have come forward, because it can be very hard to have proof of rape and things like that, right? Same thing happened with Bikram. So many people came forward, it became pretty darn clear. But if one person comes forward, like this woman came forward and accused this couple of something, I can't remember, but it was some sort of sexual assault or rape. This was months ago. And I just ran into it on Twitter again. And the wife came forward and said, look, this woman has been accusing us and trying to break us up and trying to have and she's nuts, and she's trying to have this relationship with my husband. She's been doing it since college, and this has been going on for 10 years. And there's documentation and emails, and here's some of the emails, and here's the court, and you read. So you go from seeing this woman saying this guy sexually assaulted or raped me, to the wife replying and saying, look, this is the whole situation, and here's some evidence and proof. And then you go, oh, It actually matters, innocent until proven guilty. So you can believe the story in the sense of listening, but you can't believe the story as in facts. And I have some personal experience with this. So because I'm in the public sphere, you can't believe everything you read or that you hear. You can't. And while it sounds good to say, I believe the victims, you don't know if they're victims or if they're lying. You can't. You have to look at the evidence. You have to go in open-minded and look at it. And if 16 people are coming forward or 10 people or whatever, at that point you can say, well, unless you think they're all getting paid off or they're all lying, this is definitely true. Or there's some truth to this, right?
And I think that's a nice segue. So we've talked about libel, we've talked about slander, alleged, and sources. The last big term that we really wanted to introduce for everybody is the fourth estate, and how we have journalism's essentially part of that check and balance. And that's why it's so important that we're looking for the evidence, we're looking for truth, because we're trying to set up that that place of critical thought, essentially. Would you like to talk a little bit about the fourth estate, and then give some advice to our apprentices on how not to totally nerd out on Journalism Month, but how not to burn out, or some effective ways of diving into the materials?
So just to bring it back a little bit, I think, journalism is the reason the Me Too movement started. A lot of us like to say, well, this African-American lady, was talking about it 10 years ago, but Me Too caught fire because some brave journalists, right? Farrow and others, one of them got their story rejected, I think, from ABC, and took it to the New York Times. They did like 10 years of work trying to get evidence and people on the record to take down Harvey Weinstein. So whether it's shark fins or Me Too or whatever, journalism can expose things and change our world. And if we don't change nuclear proliferation, and if we don't change climate change, and if we don't change the extinction of a vast number of species, and if we don't change gross inequality, our world is going to consume itself, and we are going to live in hell and die in hell. So really, is that urgent and heartbreaking, veganism. So journalism can be the font of all of these things. That's how inspiring that word should become to all of us. So please go forth and be evangelists. Journalism is not, however, an agenda. It is about finding truth and facts. So the fourth estate, why is it called the fourth estate? Because we have this quote on our little free library outside. Thomas Jefferson says, "An educated citizenry is vital to a functioning democracy." So without an educated citizenry, we cannot have a functioning democracy. Without journalism, you can't have an educated citizenry. Without truth, that power, whether corporate or governmental, doesn't want that truth exposed. So whether it's Watergate or Google or whatever, journalism has to shine a light on that, right? So, so the fourth estate, so executive, legislative, judicial, and the fourth key, the fourth estate to a functioning democracy is the free press. So that's why it's called the fourth estate. But remember, it's not just part of government or a part of keeping government functioning. It's a part of corporations and keeping corporations honest.
It's the whole system. It's the whole, yeah. And then any tips on, because I know this was my favorite section of the apprenticeship, and I know you are super passionate about journalism. Do you have recommendations for apprentices how to go about diving into this with not being intimidated? Because a lot of people don't come from a journalism background, but are interested in the philosophy and then the actual real tactical advice that we have in the LMS and throughout this month.
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky to have had a great journalism movie recently, Spotlight. It's on Netflix, it's free. Another one is, which I think is even better, is All the President's Men. I would start if you're intimidated by journalism. You kind of should be. I mean, it's hard stuff and it's scary and it's intense. And journalists are in turn intimidated by journalism. There's nothing wrong with being intimidated, but don't let that stop you. So a lot of new agey people always say fear is awful. Fear isn't awful. Being afraid of fear is awful. So feeling the fear or the intimidation and then moving through that, moving forward is bravery. That is the warriorship that Trungpa Rinpoche talks about. So ignoring fear or pretending that you're fearless in a macho way isn't helpful. So, yeah, Jin, that's my quote is a really awful carbon copy of FDR saying, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." So don't let fear calcify your heart, your bravery. So watch those movies. You'll get so in love with the whole journalism thing. But again, journalism is Aaron Brockovich in a sense. Journalism is Me Too. Journalism is shark fins. Journalism is any issue, plastic, veganism, is any issue that has responsible failure.
Straws. Huh? NPR was reporting on straws yesterday.
Journalism is anything, and that's what Elephant is about, which is so inspiring. Like if you look at my Twitter feed for the last week, I've got back on Twitter, and you'll see that we get to talk about 8,000 different issues every day. Leo, no. So journalism isn't advocacy, but it makes advocacy, it empowers advocacy. So remember advocacy. So remember what Sean Heinrich said, awareness, and then you're inspired to take action, and then you change the world. So advocacy is actually sort of a second step beyond journalism. Journalism might say Harvey Weinstein sexually assaulting and raping people for decades. The next step is like Time's Up, which is active advocacy, which is saying, let's take action. Let's change Hollywood. Let's do something about this. So advocacy is awesome, but advocacy has an explicit agenda. My agenda is to get straws out of the ocean. Journalism's agenda is to figure out if straws are in the ocean, if plastic is bad for the ocean, if animals are eating the plastic, if we're eating the animals in the plastic, what could be done about plastic, what additives are in plastic, look at all the facts and then say, holy shit, this is a thing. So it's not that journalism doesn't have a point of view. It definitely does. A lot of people say objective. Objectivity is not part of journalism. I'm not objective about climate change, but objectivity is getting at an important thing, which is that you're willing to look at the facts without an agenda. Good night and good luck. Yeah, Edward R. Murrow is my all-time idol. I didn't love it. Good night and good luck. It was like a little bit too sort of easy, but.
Kimberly's got a great question that I think we could pull over to Parade or to Elephant Academy and have a deeper, longer conversation about being able to speak out within a society that isn't enforcing laws. So.
I mean, there's heroes and heroines all over the world who, as Kenny was detailing, who will get killed or threatened for telling the truth. And we see that with the Me Too movement. People speak up and HR departments again and again suppress them or kind of patronize them. So, Kimberly, there are Society for Professional Journalists. There are groups. If you, I wouldn't Google it anymore. I've left Google and I've gone to an independent search engine that has privacy in it. But do your own research if you want to leave Google, which I recommend everyone leave until they kind of, reform themselves, which I doubt they'll do at this point. I'm holding back on saying which one because I really want to see if people can do their own research, which you can Google. But you go to Reddit and so Aaron, this is how I did it. I went to Reddit because there's a lot of nerdy, smart people on there. I searched search engine. I searched search engine in Reddit. And then I searched top all time. And then I found one that was talking about Google and privacy violations and all the issues around Google. And then I read the comments and the recommendations and I joined the top recommended one. So that's what I would recommend you all do. And that's what journalists do. Don't listen to me. DuckDuckGo is one of the top, but they actually kind of had some issues with DuckDuckGo. So I went to their next top recommendation.
And it's That's a
What's
good
that?
reminder from a journalism perspective of sources, remembering your sources
Right.
and where they're coming from. So we are at the end of our time, but if you have one short little sentence snippet, if you want to share, we've got a couple housekeeping things.
I'm
Okay.
good.
So a couple of housekeeping things. So books on journalism and the videos that we've recommended are in the LMS. So get into your LMS. The new one will be released on Sunday. So make sure you're in there. All that information's there. We talk about media sources and where to go, as well as, like Waylon said, doing your own research. And I just want to thank you, Waylon, because I love this topic, and we didn't get to half of the questions I wanted to get to, and I'm glad we have a whole month for this. So thank you again, and thank you all for joining us. And we apologize if there was any confusion on the link to get into the meeting. Thank you all for getting to the right place, and yes, and having awesome TAs
Yeah.
on top of it.
Awesome. And congrats to Kenny. So let's all take a bow, and with well wishes for Kenny's child and for Kenny's family, give it away. All right. Thank you, everyone. And get active in Parade and Academy, and watch one of those 2 movies this week.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay.